Hey everybody, Andy Cavernan here with another Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. I wonder, have you ever been invited to a social gathering and as you looked at your calendar, maybe considered your energy level, maybe thought about your priorities for that week or whatever time frame we're talking about, and you thought, you know what, I just can't do it. In fact, I don't want to do it. It's not important enough to me. I've got all these other things. I'm just going to blow the person off. Well, did you know that Jesus told a story about just such a situation? It was a parable, and it's a parable about a king who throws a wedding feast for his son. And he sends out his servants to tell all the invited guests, hey, now's the time to come, and come on into the feast, and it's going to be great. But the servants go out, and they make the invitation to the guests, those who are invited. And you know what happens? They say, well, I've got other priorities, I've got other things going on, I can't do it. And so the king sends them again, and he says, you know what, go out and make sure that they know. This is in Matthew 22. But the people still didn't pay any attention. And so the king got angry. And he said, you know what, fine, if the people that I've invited aren't going to come, I want you to go out into the streets and collect whomever you can, whoever is out there. It doesn't matter what they look like, doesn't matter what their background is, doesn't matter if they're part of the in crowd or not. You get them in here and we're going to have a feast. We're going to have a party for my son and in honor of his wedding. Well, what happens is the servants go out and do that. Verse 10, they went out into the roads and gathered all whom they found, both bad and good. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. So you can imagine this scene, this ragtag scene, both bad and good people mixed, people that probably had seen each other on the streets but had never interacted because they were from different social classes, maybe different races, different contexts all throughout. And what a hodgepodge group. But they're in the king's hall celebrating the wedding of the king's son. Then in verse 11 it says this, but when the king came in and looked to the guests, he saw there a man who had no wedding garment. Now, this is an interesting verse in verse 11, that this man had no wedding garment. Why is that significant? Well, in the ancient times, it was common for a person of high standing to provide wedding clothes, wedding garments for his guests. And so as this man is in the king's presence without a wedding garment means something. Listen to what the king says, and then we'll talk more about that. The king said to him, friend, how'd you get in here without a wedding garment? And when he says friend, I don't think he means like, hey, buddy, like, hey, good friend, hey, buddy, old pal. I think he means friend, like, hey, you're not supposed to act this way. And he says, and the text says, and the friend was speechless. And then the king said to the attendants, and this is staggering here. He says, bind him hand and foot and cast him into the outer darkness, in that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. Now, what's the significance there? Why does the king become so angry? Well, it's because the man has rejected the king's clothes. The man has rejected the garment that was offered to him. And this is a parable that Jesus tells to remind us of something, that God has made a broad invitation to many, to the whole world, to enter his kingdom, to enter the wedding feast of his son. But many have rejected that invitation. So then God goes out, and actually this is probably a reference to the Jews. The Jews were offered the kingdom first, and they rejected it largely. But then God went out and gathered the Gentiles, gathered this ragtag bunch, and all of a sudden they're all sitting there. But there's still a stipulation for getting into and being a part of the feast. You have to wear the king's clothes. And what God has provided for us, friends, through Jesus Christ, is righteousness, that we can be clothed in the righteousness of Jesus. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. I love the old hymn that references us being dressed in his righteousness alone. I wonder, are you trying to hang out in the presence of the king without the king's clothes? Are you trying to bring your own clothes? Are you trying to bring your own righteousness? Don't do it. That's grounds for rejection. But what's grounds for acceptance is you accepting the king's clothes, accepting the righteousness of the Son, the righteousness of Jesus. Jesus clothes us to make us acceptable before the King. The question is, will you wear the clothes? I hope you're wearing the clothes today. If not, today's the day. Put your faith in Jesus. And if you already are, be reminded, it's not yourself, it's not your actions, it's not your works that make you qualified. It's the King's clothes, and in that you can rest and find joy. Enjoy the feast, friends. Enjoy the celebration. God is good. God bless.